Before we get started on the first category, I want to introduce you to this little thing here. This is Lollipop, who is a 4-month-old Burmese kitten, and she's now Jimmy's best friend. She is the newest member of my family. It's crazy, I have so many cats now. And Jimmy will confirm, I am a crazy cat man. I was before, but now there is absolutely no question whatsoever. Right, guys? These guys are best friends. And they've only known each other just over a week. It's amazing. Anyway, let's get on to the first category. Let me just quantify what this list actually is and what is needed to be considered for it, really. Well, it has to have come out in 2018, which is a big thing. But really, it's about what I have actually used. Because some of these things you'll go, oh, well, this is much better. And don't forget, this is purely opinion-based, my opinion. But it is purely on stuff that I have actually had first-hand experience with. So if you think there's something which is way better, it may well be way better, but I have never used it. So tough luck, you're just going to put up with what I have chosen. Over the past 12 months, I had bought quite a few lenses. Most of them have been Sony E-mount. A couple of them have come out this year, but to really sort of stand out, I mean, the one I'm using right now is a 28mm f2 from Sony, really small and compact, and I really like this, and it's got, as you can see, really nice autofocus. It's not on the fastest setting, this camera right now, but it's a great lens and great for gimbals. It is one of my favorite lenses to put on the camera, but I'm going to have to go with the SLR Magic Micro Primes. There's a couple of them here, which is the 50 T1.1 and the 35mm 1.4. Here's a close focus of them, as you can see. They are very nice. They are based the optics of the stills lenses. So if you've used those, you'll be very familiar with the look. They've got a very nice vintage feel. These just have newer mechanics. They have a 82mm filter thread. And they're just, the mechanics are nice. It's got a longer focus throw as well. I just think they're incredibly beautiful, affordable cinema primes. They do have that sort of vintage feel. They're not for getting incredibly pin sharp stuff, but they do have their distinctive look. And that's why they are my favorite lenses of 2018. This is a much shorter list than last year because I have started making this video just before Christmas and I would like to get it out before the end of the year. So I'm going to move straight on to the next category, which is Best Recorder. And that's not the flute type thing, it's the recorder for external recording. It's not actually that hard to choose this one because it is actually the only really new recorder that's come out. I think it's only come out this year. I mean, there may be some other ones, but it's something I've been after for quite some time. And it's a 5-inch recorder from Atomos, and it's the Ninja 5. It is currently only HDMI. There is no SDI, so you can't use it for any RAW recording or ProRes or anything like that. But in theory, it could be potentially available for that because of some sort of interface in. But right now it is HDMI. It does 4K up to 60 frames. I don't think it goes any higher. I have no idea, but I don't think so. And it does record in all of those lovely flavors of ProRes and Avid XHD. But the key thing is it's small, and putting it onto your smaller cameras is so nice. Yeah, the big screen of the Inferno is amazing, but it's big and it's heavy and it uses up a lot of batteries. This is a fantastic on-camera recorder and a worthy winner. So next up is Best Monitor. Look, the Ninja 5 is a fantastic monitor as well as recorder, and it is really cheap. But if you want a really high quality on-camera monitor, well, there's lots of them out there. The Focus from Small HD was last year's winner. The ones I'm still using the most are the really bright 503 and 703, but they've been out well over a year. So really the only monitor that I've actually got this year, which is new, which is amazing, is the Small HD Focus OLED, which is what is here right now. It's not quite as bright as the standard Focus, but it's incredible. It's a lovely 1080p display, and if you can hear little noises around, that's the cats kicking a ping pong ball. That's actually Harriet kicking a ping pong ball around the room. What can you do? unlike some of the other categories, I have tried lots and lots of these products, these 3-axis gimbals. They are everywhere. Some from Moda, some from Julian, some from, God, I can't remember, Feiyu. There's just so many out there that I've tried. And what's the other one? Pilot Fly as well, that's a really nice one, the Adventurer. It's really difficult because I haven't spent a huge amount of time with most of them. And the one that I've just recently received, which is the Weeble Lab, which is really lovely little one. It's a really nice, unique design, and it's actually pretty smooth. I just haven't used it enough, but I think it would possibly have won this category if I'd had more chance to use it. But it is definitely an honourable mention. But the winner is the DJI Ronin-s. It is a very, very good 3-axis gimbal. It is a one-handed one, but you do need 2 grips for it. Hopefully they're coming out with a solution for that. It is very smooth, it's very high-tech, it's got so much going for it. The motors are very good and you can get some incredibly smooth results from it. It is a bit on the heavy side, that is, for me, the biggest downside, but it is cheap. It's an incredibly well-made 3-axis gimbal. It had to be my winner of this category, but as I said, the Weeble Lab, such a close second. Next up is my favourite drone of 2018. Have I bought that many? I've had a few from the little Tello, the cheap $100 one. And the Parrot Anafi is one of my favourite drones that I've used this year. It's not the most brilliant drone itself, because it isn't as advanced as some of the DJI ones, but what it does have is a really, really gorgeous image. And I used this drone a lot when I was filming my Skiathos Kittens documentary series in the summer. The results were just beautiful, really filmic looking image. But it doesn't win the best drone of the year, and that is also going to go to DJI because it's the Mavic 2 Pro. It has to be the Mavic 2 Pro because it's just an incredibly gorgeous drone. Very, very advanced features. It's got a 1-inch sensor, which is key, with an aperture, and it shoots 10 bits internally. Obviously not an external recorder because that would look weird with an Atomos plugged into it. But yeah, it's a lovely image. It doesn't do 4K 60p, which is what I would like it to have done, 50p or 60p. So it is only up to 30p, but it is really nice. It's got 2 different modes for 4K. It's got a full field of view, which does have some slight image issues, but I've not really noticed them. And a 1-to-1 sampling on there with this. It's called a Hasselblad camera, or whatever that means. It's a Sony sensor. I think it's the color science, which is Hasselblad. But at the end of the day, it's an incredibly well-made drone, very advanced, and a gorgeous image. Some people have said, oh, it's not very sharp, or it has this distortion on and things like that. Well, look, it's the thing about when shooting in the 10-bit mode in log, it's not very processed at all, so you have to add the sharpening yourself in post, and when you do that, it looks fantastic. So there you go. I do have the zoom as well, which is okay. It's just a small sensor. It's nice to have a zoom on a drone for sure, but with that 2 different types of field of view that you get with the Mavic 2 Pro, I would definitely choose that for sure. It's got higher megapixels, it's got a bigger sensor, it's got nicer optics, and the key thing for me, it has an aperture, so you can control your f-stop that way without always having to put in more shutter speed to change your exposure if it's getting too bright. So a worthy winner. I'm going to move on to cameras and the best mirrorless APS-C. So APS-C or smaller, let's call it that. It's very easy for me because there's a very clear winner here, and it is the Fuji X-T3 without question. And I've had 2 new Fujis this year, and I think Fuji makes some amazing mirrorless cameras. The video has been a bit of a slow progress. Well, not really that slow, because I got the X-T2 about a year and a half ago, and then I got the XH1, which is an honourable mention, which is basically X-T2 with a stabilised sensor, which has got much better with new firmware. Great thing about Fuji, they do update firmware properly to give you really big improvements. But the X-T3 is a big step up. It doesn't have the stabilised sensor though, which is, I'm looking forward to the XH2, which hopefully will do that, or the X-T4. What it does have is internal recording of 4K 10-bit up to 60 frames per second. And that's amazing. It does 10-bit out as well, so you can use it with Ninja 5 and record 422 ProRes recording, and it looks amazing. It's just wonderful. It's an incredibly good stills camera. The Fujis are amazing, and the video is so good. The autofocus is okay. Video autofocus is okay. It's not Sony or Canon good. It is usable, but it's not as good as this. But it is very good. But it's a clear winner for the crop sensor, the APS-C or smaller mirrorless camera of the year. She is such a rascal. She's knocking everything over. That face I can forgive, so I forgive her anything. So you're going to sit here calmly. Not wide enough on this shot to stay here. Maybe you are. So full frame. She's not going to stay, is she? So best full frame camera of 2018. You are going to stay there. Well, that's awkward. Finally, Canon and Nikon have brought out full frame mirrorless cameras. It's ridiculous because the first Sony one came out 2013, 5 years ago, I think, with the A7, which is a long time ago, 2013. So it's taken them 5 years to finally bring out. We've had the M series from Canon, and then we had the 1 series from Nikon with really small sensors. The M series was APS-C. Neither very good. I tried the M50, really didn't like it, although I liked the white body. And I tried the Nikon Z7, the EOS-R, and yeah, they're both good for certain things. The Nikon Z7 I really like. It's a bit like an A7R III in a Nikon body. It only has 1 slot, which is a bit annoying, but it does have 10-bit output, which is really nice. So you can use a recorder and record 10-bit output 4K up to 30 frames per second, no higher. But it doesn't let you record internally at the same time. If you want to shoot log, it only does it externally, so you cannot record log internally. So you're limited to your picture profiles, which aren't that flat. But the image is very nice. It's very similar to the Nikon D850, which was one of my favourites. I think it may have even won a category last year, but maybe not. But I love the image out of that, so it's very, very, very similar to that. But it's not as good as the A7R III. It's not as fast. The autofocus isn't as good. It doesn't have the dual slots, but it's got a lot going for it. And this new lens mount is very wide. It's the biggest mirrorless lens mount out there, so it's gonna let you be able to get really fast glasses. There's a 50 0.95 coming out. I've not tried it, but I really like the Z7, but it required me to buy all new glass, so I only borrowed it, I didn't buy it, Move on to now the Canon EOS-R. You know, people love Canon. I love Canon. I've been using Canon for years. I didn't buy the 5D Mark IV. It was incredibly disappointing for me. It didn't have anywhere near enough innovations, and when you went into video mode for 4K, it had 1.78 times crop, which is smaller than APS-C, which is around 1.5, 1.6 times. Crazy, getting towards the GH5 end. So I didn't get that. The EOS-R was announced, and straight away the crop incredibly disappointed me, because it's a 1.8 times crop in 4K, up to 30 frames per second. But I did want to try it and use it, and I have been using it for a couple of months now, and yeah, the crop is a killer. Because the problem is, if you're shooting stills and then you want to shoot a bit of video, if you're shooting 4K, you're going to have to change lenses, or you have to be on a zoom and come out. It's a nightmare for doing video and stills. Unless you want to stick with just shooting HD, then it will keep the full frame, which is such a shame. And it does up to 30 frames in 4K. It does up to 60 frames in HD. If you want to do up to 120 frames, you drop down to 720p, which is not very good. But one slot again, just like the Z7, which is crazy. I don't just have one slot. SD cards, actually, because the it's XQD for the Z7. I forgot to mention that. The EOS-R is such a disappointment, because it could be so good. It's quite a slow camera. It's slower than the 5D Mark IV, but it's essentially a 5D Mark IV in a mirrorless body. It does have a flip out screen, so for vloggers that's really good. Canon do have great autofocus. I don't think it's as good as Sony autofocus for speed, because I just find even with modern lenses it just tends to not be as good, especially with the the L series lenses, which is a bit of a pain. But yeah, it's a frustrating camera, because it could be so good, the image is so nice if it wasn't so cropped in. But yeah, it's a frustrating camera. I like it for certain things. The wireless is really nice for transferring photos, and I'd say the autofocus and flip out screen is nice, but it can't be my favourite mirrorless full frame camera of the year, because it's the one that's filming me right now, which is the A7III. I went to the launch of it earlier this year, and they called it the basic camera. When you go to a Sony launch, you don't know what you're actually going for, and you sign an NDA, and then they let you know what it is. And I have to say I was disappointed, because I was hoping it was the A7S III, which still hasn't come out. Maybe if you're watching this in the future, it has come out, but it hasn't come out in 2018. And I was really hoping it would. And so another A7, the base model, wasn't really exciting for me. And then I used it, and holy crap, it's so good. Video is really lovely. Full frame image is nice, really nice. And the crop mode is really nice. So you can crop, you can shoot full frame, and you can have a crop of 1.5 times. And with that clear image zoom, you can crop even more to a Canon 4K crop. Not that you really need to very often, but if you want to get longer on a lens, it is nice. So yeah, the stills are fantastic. I think it's a 24-ish megapixel sensor. It shoots 4K up to 30 frames. It is only 8-bit though, 8-bit internally and externally. Oh yeah, that's one thing about the Canon EOS-R. It does output 10-bit to an external recorder, which is a really nice thing. Whereas no Sony stills cameras right now do that. It has dual slots, which is for me an essential thing when shooting. And everything it just does really well. Slow motion, that's 50, 60, 100, 120p, using the full sensor. It's terrific in low light. There's just so much going for this camera. I think it's a fantastic camera. It's not my favorite mirrorless still, because that is this one here, which is the R3, which came out last year, so that's why it won last year. But it is a very close second. I think it's an amazing, amazing camera. It's one of the things that has really made people come over to Sony because of the price, which was around $2,000, and the feature set. It's an incredibly good camera and a worthy winner, and a very challenging year for best full frame mirrorless. Before we get on to the main prize, which for me is the best video camera of 2018, there's a couple of minor categories that I want to go over. The first one is the innovation of 2018, the best innovation of 2018. And this is the winner here. This is the Insta360 One X. And you know, 360 cameras, I've been using them for a while, and I've got a full review, which is linked here, of this camera. And what's amazing about it, it's not about using a headset, it's what it can do. It's amazing. The stabilization of the 6-axis internally is incredible. I mean, the image could definitely do with being a higher resolution for when you do crop in, but some of the stuff you can do with it is absolutely amazing. It's an incredibly cool gadget and a camera that you can actually use for some, you know, some normal stuff, almost. It is fantastic.
Stand clear of the door, please.
Sorry, mate. You don't by chance let me build it, do you? I wonder if you meant ND.
I did get the Insta360 Pro 2, but I haven't had a chance to properly use it yet. It looks like a nice improvement over the initial one, but this one here, it's just something special about it, and it has to be my winner of Best Innovation of 2018. Another new category for this year is Best Wow Factor. Best Wow Factor? What a lame name. And this is it. This is the most wow thing that I've seen this year. And this is the, as you know, well, you should know, this is the DJI Osmo Pocket, which is such a cool gadget. A 3-axis gimbal camera built in, way smaller than the original Osmo. It's like a little handheld Mavic Pro, but actually shoots 4K up to 60 frames a second, which is really cool. But it's so small, it lasts ages. It's got a little screen on it, which is too small for me without glasses, but you can put your phone into it here, and you can get some nice stuff. Look, it's not a perfect thing. It's can you use it for your pro work? Well, yeah, it's just the problem is you can't soften down that image. It is quite overly sharpened and saturated and contrasty, but you can still get some really nice results, and it's so small you really can take it everywhere with you. This really does have the wow factor, yet still a naff name. And now on to the effectively the best picture, not really, just the best video camera of 2018. And I am going to chicken out here and give this award to 2 different cameras. You know, I think the problem is that both of these cameras are fantastic. One of them is cheaper than the other, but when the first one came out, It's groundbreaking for the price and the features, and I've been using it most of the year. And the second one came out much later in the year, and they have very similar image and features. I'm sure you've worked out what these cameras are. The first one is the Kinefinity Terra 4K, which I did actually get at Christmas last year, but it was after I made the best 2017 video, so it qualifies, and it's incredible. An amazing camera. It's cheap. It was like $3.5 grand or so, plus any bits that you needed. It's a Super 35, oh sorry, Sub Super 35 sensor, so it's like a 1.85 times crop, like the Panasonic GH5S, and very similar to the Canon EOS-R 4K. And it shoots 4K up to 75 frames, I think. Yeah. And by cropping the sensor and shooting in HD, you can shoot up to 240 frames per second. It is a really fantastic camera, a groundbreaking camera for the price and the features. It is a cinema camera. It's a really fantastic high feature cinema camera. It is reliable. I've not had any issues with it whatsoever. It records on SSD. I've got a whole big massive review which is linked here. And tying with that camera is of course the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K, which really is, for the price, is astonishing what you get for whatever it is, £1,200. It's 4K up to 60 frames, records ProRes, all flavours of it, RAW. It's going to have the new B-RAW, which I haven't got any yet. It's just lovely. It's a same size sensor. Whether it's the same sensor or not, I don't know. The Terra 4K is dual sensitivity. I don't know if this one is at all. I think it may well be. They both produce really beautiful images. The image out of the Blackmagic is so nice. It's the first Blackmagic camera that I think is actually a tool that I could use in professional work. It's not the Pocket camera, it's much more of a follow-up camera to their cinema camera, but then it'll get a really confusing name because they already have a 4K one, which is the Blackmagic Production Camera 4K. They could have called it the Blackmagic Cinema Camera 4K, but it really will just confuse people. So their names are getting confusing, but it is a really high featured camera. It's pig ugly, I'm sorry, but it is. It's the ugliest camera I've come across in years. It just looks like some sort of 80s 35mm film, as in stills camera, you know, one of those automatic ones, like from Olympus or something. It is ugly, it's a weird shape. It has a really nice big screen on it, which doesn't articulate. I don't need it to flip round, I just need it to angle, so when I'm not at straight on height, I can actually see what's going on. Battery life sucks, but then again, what do you expect from a Blackmagic Pocket camera? It uses the LP9 Canon battery. It lasts about 45 minutes, but you know, you do need to build it up to make it a much better camera. But you know, it's so cheap and the image is so good, the features are so good. It's an amazing camera, it really is. I think I prefer using the Terra 4K for its form factor. It feels much more like a traditional camera, but the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera is the cinema camera for the masses, and so a worthy joint winner with the Kinefinity Terra 4K. I'm going to be shooting a new masterclass for MZ. It's not a follow-up to my cinematic masterclass, but it is going to take a long time. I'm going to start filming it, I think, yeah, in the middle of January-ish, and it's going to affect the amount of stuff that I can put out on YouTube. I don't do that much anyway, but I have been working on reviews of the Blackmagic Cinema Camera 4K. I've been working on reviews of the mirrorless comparison of the Z7 and the EOS-R, the A7III, and the Fuji cameras, and I shot a lot for that. And I'm working on a review of the Weeble Lab, and I'm working on a review of the E2 camera, which is from a Zcam or Zcam, which also has a similar sensor to the Blackmagic Pocket camera and the Terra 4K, and it shoots 4K up to 120 frames per second. It's a really cool camera, but I just haven't used it enough. Here's some images from it. It looks really nice, and I hope to do a video on that as soon as I can, obviously down to this MZ masterclass getting in the way. And one video I really want to do, and it is about, oh my god, this camera here. The most exciting camera I've held in years. This is from Kinefinity as well. It is the Marvo full frame. So it's LF, it's called full frame. So full frame like the A7 III and you know everything like that. But this is a video camera. This is a full frame video camera. It's not the first full frame video camera. That was made by Sony. It was a handy cam. It wasn't very good. Aliased like crazy. And they dropped it, and that's it. And of course we do have the full frame Venice, and we do have, that's from Sony, which is very expensive. And we have the Canon C700 full frame, which is very expensive and very big and heavy. They're like big production cinema cameras. This is, I think it's like 10 grand pounds for the body only. It's probably the same as dollars. And I have used it on a documentary shoot already. I've only had it a week. I haven't shot any test footage yet whatsoever. I've only shot a proper job on it, and it looked fantastic. But a full frame video camera at this price point is amazing. A full frame cinema camera. So there is the Marvo Super 35, which produces very nice images as well. Some stuff from it here, but this, the full frame, a true full frame video camera, cinema camera, is something I've been wanting ever since I got my first full frame camera to shoot video, which was the Canon 5D Mark II, 4K up to 75 frames, I believe. It's an amazing camera, and I will be shooting footage with it. We are using it in the masterclass, and I will get some content out there from that camera as soon as much. Anyway, that's it from me. I hope 2018 was good for you, and I hope 2019 is much better. I hope we're all still going to be here for the best camera gear of 2019. Fingers crossed things don't all go terribly wrong. See ya.